Hello. This will be the first of my writing vlogs. I'm going to do them once a month in place of one of my other videos. Usually probably at the beginning of the month. That's my guess. I'm going to try and do that. I don't know if I can stick to that schedule. Also depends on what kind of videos I'm putting on. If I do a series of videos relating to one thing, I might push back a vlog or whatever. But this will just be me talking about what I did last month, basically. Maybe a little bit of a redux version of what I put out in my newsletter every month, which is available for free. RobbieDorman.com/newsletter. Subscribe, you get 2 free exclusive books, which is the first thing I'm going to talk about is revisions. I revised my free newsletter book for 2022. It's called A Fatal Paradox. It is about a woman, an elderly woman, diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and alongside that diagnosis, a serial killer that once plagued her small town has returned 50 years later. When she was a teenager, the killer struck and killed a slate of people, including her best friend. And now she has to deal with this diagnosis and deal with this killer returning. But the twist is that as her memory starts to fail her in the present day, she starts finding herself revisiting old memories relating back to the killer 50 years ago, and not just revisiting them, but actually reliving them, but traveling through time effectively. She is able to affect the course of history by, instead of doing one thing, doing another in those old memories, because they're not memories at all. She's time traveling, and she's trying to discover who the killer is, both in the present and in the past, and hopefully can stop him from killing her best friend. I really like it. After revising it, it's not a both my books on from my free newsletter are not, they're not like throwaway books. They're not like garbage I wrote that I don't like, so I just give them away for free. They're both very good, and I really like A Fatal Paradox. And I think that because it's a little bit different than what I normally write, it's more of a, it's closer procedural. There's not a lot of gore and horror. It's mostly, it's trying to figure out who this killer is, dealing with science. There's science fiction elements with the time travel stuff. I hope it will reach a couple of different people and so subscribe to my newsletter and read what I have to write every month. If you haven't subscribed, you should. You get 2 free books, like I said, and a free short story. That's also very good. And you get updates every single month about what I'm working on, and a book recommendation. So I try and give lesser known stuff that people probably maybe not know about, and hopefully you can expand your horizons. I revised A Fatal Paradox. I also revised Burial, which is my next book, be coming out hopefully at the end of this month. I'm still waiting on a cover, which is the sticking point at this point. If otherwise, I probably would have already announced a pre-order. But Burial is my first non-horror novel that I'll be releasing. It is a western, post-apocalyptic western. Basically, at the end of after some terrible wars happened in the future, and the world fell apart, and now they're starting to rebuild. And it kind of takes place at the end of the wild period and the beginning of the reconstruction. And I liken it to a bit like if you've ever seen The Wild Bunch, Peckinpah movie, Peckinpah Western. It's about, these outlaws at basically the death of the Wild West, and how they are being driven out. There's no place in the world for these type of men anymore, for good and for ill. And my main character, Emma, is an outlaw like that, where there's not really a place for her anymore. the main story is her looking for revenge, but it's not a typical revenge story, because she's already killed the man that wronged her at the beginning of the story. He's already dead. The revenge she's seeking is to bury him in a cursed wasteland, and if she does that, she believes he will go to the worst parts of hell. It's not enough that he dies. He needs to suffer in hell forever for his sins. And so that is the journey the book takes you on, is on her quest to bury his body in a kind of nuclear wasteland. And all the things she goes through. She explores the world, faces a lot of people trying to stop her for various reasons, and she has to get past them all and deal also with her own trauma. It's very hard for me to judge things at a distance, from something I wrote and something I just revised, which revisions are very painful and can kind of, they mess with your head a little bit because you're so deep in the weeds on just such little tiny choices. Like, oh, is this word better than that word in this one sentence? And this, out of the 10,000 sentences in this book, I'm thinking so deeply about this one sentence. Is it, and you stop thinking about the grander scope of the book and what it is and how good it is. But I really like it. Maybe even I love it. I love all my books and for their own, in my own way. They are a product of me, so of course I would like them. But everyone has told me that this is my best book yet. All my beta readers, and I think that's funny considering it's not a horror novel at all. But it does still fit tonally, I think, with the rest of my work. I still write. I have the same style largely. And I think if you read my other books, you'll like this one too. And it's still a genre book. I love Westerns. I love horror novels. I just haven't never written one before, but I like it a lot. And Emma's great. Fantastic character. Her and Ebner, the two E's, my two favorite characters I've written probably. And to be fair, Death Rattle is a little bit of a Western too. So, Burial will be out probably within a few weeks. If you follow me on social media, you subscribe to my newsletter, you follow me anywhere, I will be singing to the high heavens about, hey, it looks out, you should buy it. Which you should. You should pre-order it and buy it and review it. All those things help me out a lot. I don't know if you follow many indie authors. If you do, you should, more so than anyone who's publishing a big publishing house or someone's in a bookstore, pre-ordering their book and leaving a review after you've read it, if you like it at least, is incredibly impactful. Even if it's like a one sentence review of like, what a great book, had a lot of fun, 5 stars. Like, that's enough. And that really helps a lot. Not just to me, but any indie author you follow and buy their books, I don't know if I don't know if I can adequately describe how helpful it is to have just add one review, because they add up and they're very hard to get from people who are, a random person who doesn't follow me. Perhaps they're not likely to leave a review, but now that I do this, if I read an indie book, I absolutely leave a review if I liked it, because it's so helpful. A lot of revisions this month, not a lot of writing, which is always hard, but at the beginning of the year is always full of revisions. I'm always revising 2 books right away. First, the book that usually comes up, my first third, I publish 3 books a year, so my first book of the year, I have to revise it at the beginning of the year right after the holidays, and then my newsletter books. So I generally revise them right in a row, and then I might even write 2 books before I revise the next one. But that's the other thing thing I've really done. I have started writing my next book, but it was a little bit of a struggle to figure out what I wanted to write next. That is a question that's harder and harder as I go, because there's a lot of pressure about which book I choose to write, what idea I choose to follow, because I want it to sell, and I want it to be something I like writing, and I want it to be something that I feel confident in. It has to check all those boxes. I certainly have ideas that I like, and I go, oh, that's a good idea. Then I go, no one's going to buy that book. It's a weird idea. And it's not, I'm not saying no one will buy it, but certain ideas are more marketable than others. And that's just a kind of a grim reality of indie publishing. You have to come up with an idea that's relatively marketable. Elevator pitch. Can I sell this book to you in 2 sentences? Very simplified, obviously, but still, in 2 sentences, can I describe the gist of the book and get you to buy it? And I think that it's not something that I necessarily rankle against. I'm not angry, but it does certainly count for what I decide to write. And I'm debating, like, well, I had an idea. I was like, oh, that's a really good idea. But the conflict, the clash was, I have one of my more popular novels, War on Halloween, has a pseudo cliffhanger ending. It's not, I don't want to call it a true cliffhanger because the plot does resolve. I do not write any books that just have no plot. What's the right word? The plots resolve at the end of the book. There's no loose threads generally. But there is certainly a place where a sequel or sequels could go. And I'm like, well, and there's a couple people who have read the book and gone, are you going to plan a sequel? I'm like, well, yeah, I'm planning a sequel. I've been planning a sequel since it came out. I just don't know. Actually, and I sat down this month. I'm like, well, if I wrote a trilogy for this, which I think is perfectly applicable for this idea, what would it be? And I sketched it out. I'm like, well, it sounds good. And there's plenty of stuff there that I can write. And I think it'd be entertaining. My only hesitance starting is, one, it's a big commitment. It's writing 2 books. And I probably would write them right back to back, and edit them together, because then they would make, they'd feel more cohesive. But so it's a commitment in that, I'm writing 2 manuscripts back to back. It's a lot of words and a lot of my time, which is finite and very valuable. And as I write more and more books and have to and kind of manage my back catalog, it's taking up more and more of my time. I'm more conscious of where my time is going. And if I'm writing those 2 books, I want them to be successful. I want it to be worth it. And they would not be the same book as War on Halloween. They would be a sequel to it. But they would not be, neither of those 2 books would be the same as War on Halloween, and they probably wouldn't even be similar to the same to each other. They both would be different from each other too. And I don't know how people would feel about that. I'm perfectly okay with that, but I'm not most people. And I relate it to very much like Alien versus Aliens, or Terminator and Terminator 2. The original Terminator is a slasher movie originally. Basically the Terminator is a killer. You're Jason, and he's just unstoppable. He's a machine, literally. But Terminator 2 is an action movie. There's certainly action in Terminator 1. It's not an action movie. It's a slasher movie. People get murdered by a machine monster for an hour and a half, and then Sarah Connor crushes him. Terminator 2 is a full-on popcorn action movie. It's silly even at times. Hasta la vista, baby. Stuff like that. And Aliens, in relation to Alien is a horror movie, and Aliens is an action movie. Certainly horror elements in it, but it's absolutely an action movie. You can see the James Cameron connection with all of these, and it would be a different book altogether. The first Warren Halloween is a small town horror book related to Stranger Things or Stephen King's It, where it's like kind of insidious corruption in a small town, and a family moving in trying to understand the culture of the town, and ultimately kind of defend Halloween, the concept of Halloween, what Halloween represents to me, which is basically an acceptance and weirdos. That's what Halloween is. Halloween is like, you get to be weird, and it's accepting being a weirdo. It's also, more than Halloween's a lot about understanding how to be an ally to oppressed groups. It's effectively what the book is about. I didn't really plan on that being the theme when I wrote it, but it turned out to be the theme, and I don't mind it. I like it. But the second and third books will not be about that, and I wouldn't want them to be. I don't want to write the same book twice ever. I always want it to be different, but I'm also not a person who reads a lot of series, and I don't know what a series reader wants. Do they want permutations on a formula? Do they want Law and Order, where every episode is relatively formulaic? There's twists and turns that are different, but largely it follows that same structure. Do they want that? I'm sure some do. And so I have that all sketched out. I don't know if I want to pull the trigger on it yet. It will get written. It's more about, I don't know. I feel like I'm waiting for like a critical mass where there's a lot of demand for it, and then I'll release it. But until that point, it's a lot of time to devote to something I'm not confident in. I think that's an important part, because when I'm not confident in an idea, I don't write very well. I hem and haw, I second guess myself, and it makes it harder to just do my job. So ultimately, I just went with that first idea. The idea I'm very excited about, the idea that I cracked. I don't know. It came to me over the holidays. I don't know why. And that's sometimes how ideas work, where you're like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, and then like you ponder it for a second. You're like, oh, that, and that. Oh, that's the book. And it's a zombie book. I'm working on a zombie book, my first zombie book, and I think that's I've slowly ticked off different horror subgenres as I've gone. I was like, for a long time it was vampires. What do I do with a vampire idea? I'm like, I didn't want to write a normal vampire book. And then ultimately I did. I wrote Death Rattle, which I'm very proud of. And so I think it's an original idea of vampires. I've written my werewolf novel. I had my kind of a Lovecraftian book with what dwells beneath the waves. I have various permutations on a lot of horror subgenres, and there's so many that I don't get tired of them. But zombies, I like the idea of zombies. And especially like the Romero zombies as metaphor thing. I think over time, obviously zombies have been played out. There was a time when there were so many zombie stories, so many zombie movies, that they kind of lost steam and people aren't very excited about them anymore. But it doesn't mean I don't want to write a zombie book. And I finally had an idea that I was like, oh, that is a slight, somewhat original take on the zombie story, modern zombie story. And it's effectively, the gist is an Amazon-like company is developing a serum that will turn dead people into slaves, effectively into workforce where they don't have to pay them. And I was like, oh, there's like, I always like some social commentary, and I think it matches also the idea of, the Romero social commentary thing, which I love doing that. And, I think our protagonist is just a low-level worker in a fulfillment center, and he kind of discovers this plot, and chaos happens. It's not going to be I have in mind, like, I think that's the other thing I'd mention, is that I don't really think of my plots in relation to other books, I generally think of them in relation to movies. I think of like the tonal, I take a couple movies and I mash them together, and then my plot and my prose, I try and connect to books I've read. The way I write, I try and emulate and homage great writers, but my plots are more similar to movies. And I don't know why that works the way it does in my head, but that's what I do. And so obviously Romero, Zombies, Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead especially. But I think this book actually will match the tone more of like Return of the Living Dead and Day of the Dead, which are very dark and very kind of nihilistic. And I think that's this book. A lot of it's reflecting about where we are as, we're in late stage capitalism and stuff like that. Because this guy's going to be down on his luck, bouncing from job to job, trying to find something that sticks, that doesn't dehumanize him. And that's another obvious sticking, like, oh, look, you work a job that dehumanizes you. Oh, you work a job that turns you literally into a zombie. Subtext is for cowards, by the way. I don't know. I'm excited about this idea, and I think it will sell well, and I think it's the original take on zombies, and I'm excited, and I'm working on it now. I've only got a few chapters down, but I'll knock it out pretty quick. I generally write pretty fast once I have the idea. I hope it'll be done before I'm targeting the end of this month, into March 2022, to get it done. By the time Burial comes out, hopefully it'll be done, and then I can move on to either revising the next book or writing another manuscript and deciding what that will be, which will be another struggle. But I have a big idea pile, but a lot of them they're incomplete. But I try not to think too far ahead, because I always go like, oh, I'm gonna write that next, and then I get there and I'm like, wait a minute, I have this new idea that I like more. I'm gonna chase that instead. But yeah, that's been this month. I'm on Facebook now, facebook.com/Robbie Dorman Writer. So you can follow me there if you'd like. I'll have the link below now in my, I'll have the link in my socials on YouTube. I need to update them, but I'm back on Facebook. I left my personal account. I left it a long time ago, and I resisted going back, but I need to for my business. It's just the way it is. Which is another part of this zombie book, is very much like having to compromise because, do things with big corporations because you have to live in the world. It's easy to say, oh yeah, just don't use Facebook and don't shop on Amazon and don't do this and don't do that and don't go to Walmart. And you're like, well, I need milk, man. Or something, things like that. You're like, well, I live in the world, man. I think that's enough. I do appreciate everyone subscribed so far. I'm still building the channel, but I have plans. Tell your friends, share the video. I appreciate that. Every time I see someone share it on social media, I really appreciate that. Leave a comment and give me a thumbs up if you watched the video, and give me an idea for a video you want me to do. What do you want me to discuss? I have a lot of ideas, but I do want to, talk about things people want to hear about. Because I could pontificate forever about writing. It's very easy. I have a lot to say, but I do want it to be useful. I'm Robbie Dorman. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you really liked it, click subscribe. Till next time, be seeing you.